Greetings to you all, and welcome to today's teaching. Leviticus 17 is a chapter that contains some of the most quoted passages concerning blood, sacrifice, atonement, and sacredness of life. And unfortunately, these verses are often read only through a literal lens. Yet, throughout Scripture, blood repeatedly symbolizes something deeper than physical blood. Blood represents life, vitality, living energy, and what animates consciousness. Remember, the life of the flesh is in the blood. It points us toward the life flowing within consciousness. Without foundation established, let's begin. Leviticus 17, verse 1 to 2. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto Aaron, and unto his sons, and unto all the children of Israel, and say unto them, This is the thing which the Lord had commanded, saying. At first glance, these verses seem like a simple introduction. But symbolically, they reveal something important. This message is for everyone. Moses equals awakened understanding or revealed wisdom. Aaron equals discernment, the priestly faculty within consciousness. Sons of Aaron equals expressions of discernment in daily life. Children of Israel equals manifestations of awakened awareness. Israel is awakened awareness. So children of Israel equals manifestations of awakened awareness. Commandment equals a principle of alignment with truth. Notice the audience. The message is given to Moses, Aaron, his sons, and all Israel. This is significant. The teaching is not limited to priests. It is not reserved for spiritual leaders. It is for the entire community. There are certain truths that apply to everyone, not just teachers, not just leaders, not just experts. For example, honesty, awareness, responsibility, and integrity. These principles affect everyone. Next line. This is the thing which the Lord had commanded. A commandment is not merely an arbitrary rule. It is often describing how reality functions. The chapter begins by gathering wisdom, which is Moses, discernment, Aaron, application, his sons, and the entire community, Israel, before introducing the teaching. Why? Because what follows concerns life itself, and life concerns everyone. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 1 to 2 teaches the principles governing life, awareness, and alignment are not reserved for a select few. They apply to every aspect of consciousness. The message moves from revelation to discernment to application to the entire kingdom. Because truth is only fully realized when it becomes part of everyday life. Verse 3 to 4. What man soever there be of the house of Israel that killeth an ox, or lamb, or goat in the camp, or that killeth it out of the camp, and bringeth it not unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, to offer an offering unto the Lord, before the tabernacle of the Lord, blood shall be imputed unto that man. He had shed blood, and that man shall be cut off from among his people. At first glance, this sounds like a regulation about where animals could be slaughtered. But symbolically, this passage is introducing a profound principle. What do you do with the life energy, attention, and power entrusted to you? Do you bring it into awareness, or do you expend it unconsciously? Let's look at the symbols. House of Israel equals awakened consciousness and all its expressions. Ox equals strength, labor, productive power. Lamb equals innocence, gentleness, vulnerability. Goat equals desire, ambition, driving forces within consciousness. To kill equals consume, expend, sacrifice, or direct energy. Tabernacle equals the inner sanctuary of awareness. Blood equals life, vitality, living energy. Cut off equals separation from alignment or fragmentation. The ox, lamb, and goat. Notice that all three animals represent forms of life energy. Every day, we spend energy, attention, focus, and creativity. Those are our oxen, lambs, and goats. The question is, where are they being offered? In the camp or out of the camp? This phrase is fascinating. It suggests whether publicly or privately, whether seen or unseen, whether in front of others or alone. The principle remains the same. Relatable example. Some people behave one way publicly and another privately. But consciousness remains consciousness. The sanctuary remains the sanctuary. Reality is not fooled by appearances. Bringeth it not unto the door of the tabernacle. Now we arrive at the heart of the teaching. The life energy must be brought before the sanctuary. Symbolically, awareness must be involved. Relatable example. Someone becomes angry. There are two possibilities. One, unconscious response, where the anger is immediately acted out. The energy is spent. Nothing is learned. Or two, conscious response, where the anger is brought before awareness, observed, examined, understood. The energy becomes an offering. In relationship, someone feels jealousy. Instead of immediately accusing their partner, they ask, why am I feeling this? What is this revealing? The emotion is brought to the tabernacle. This connects beautifully to modern life. Most people expend enormous amounts of life energy unconsciously. They sacrifice time, focus, attention, and emotional energy without awareness. Social media example. Someone spends 6 hours doom scrolling. At the end, they feel drained. Why? Their life energy was sacrificed, but it was never brought before the sanctuary. No awareness was involved. Next line, blood shall be imputed unto that man. Remember, blood symbolizes life, vitality, or living energy. So symbolically, this verse is saying, you are responsible for what you do with your life force. If someone continually spends attention on fear, energy on resentment, and focus on comparison, eventually the consequences belong to them. Not because they are being punished, because consciousness reflects where life energy is invested. In career, someone spends 10 years avoiding growth. Eventually, the results appear. The blood is imputed. The life energy was spent somewhere. Next line, he had shed blood. This becomes deeply symbolic. Bloodshed is not merely violence here. It is the misuse of life, the wasting of life, the unconscious expenditure of what is sacred. Many people sacrifice health, relationships, peace, and purpose for things that never truly nourish them. Years later, they realize, I spent my life force on something that wasn't worth it. The blood was shed. Next line. Cut off from among his people. Again, this is not necessarily punishment. It is describing consequence. Relationship example. If someone continually avoids vulnerability, eventually intimacy becomes difficult. They become cut off, not because they were rejected, because their choices produced separation. Spiritual example. If someone continually ignores awareness, discernment weakens. The connection becomes fragmented. The person becomes cut off from deeper perception. This connects beautifully to the kingdom within. The chapter is teaching that life energy is sacred. Attention is sacred. Consciousness is sacred. What you sacrifice matters. Where you sacrifice it matters. Every day, people offer sacrifices. Not animals, but attention, focus, energy, emotions, and priorities. The question is, are those sacrifices being brought before awareness? Or are they being spent unconsciously? This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus continually called people into awareness, into wakefulness, into presence. Why? Because unconscious living continually sheds blood. Conscious living transforms blood into offering. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 3 to 4 teaches, life energy is sacred and should not be spent unconsciously. Every thought, every emotion, every ambition, every action represents a form of sacrifice. When consciousness brings these offerings before awareness, transformation becomes possible. When consciousness acts without awareness, life energy is simply expended. The chapter is inviting us to stop living mechanically and begin offering our lives consciously. Because whatever receives your attention eventually receives your life. And where your life is invested determines the harvest that follows. Verse 5. To the end that the children of Israel may bring their sacrifices, which they offer in the open field, even that they may bring them unto the Lord, unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, unto the priest, and offer them for peace offerings unto the Lord. This verse explains why the previous instruction was given. The goal is not control. The goal is consciousness. The goal is to bring what is happening unconsciously into awareness. Notice the movement. Open field to tabernacle to priest to peace offering. That sequence is deeply symbolic. Children of Israel equals expressions of awakened consciousness. Sacrifices equals attention, energy, priorities, emotions or desires. Open field equals ordinary life, the unexamined mind or unconscious living. Tabernacle equals the inner sanctuary of awareness. Priest equals discernment. Peace offering equals integration, harmony, reconciliation within consciousness. The open field. The open field represents everyday life. The place where most people spend their energy. The place where things simply happen. Most people react automatically. Someone insults them, they react. Someone rejects them, they react. Something triggers fear, they react. The sacrifice happens in the field. No awareness, no examination, no discernment. Relationship example. Someone feels insecure. Instead of examining the insecurity, they immediately accuse their partner. The sacrifice remains in the field. Why bring it to the tabernacle? Because awareness transforms experience. The same event can either create suffering or create wisdom, depending on whether awareness enters the process. Relatable example. Someone experiences failure. Without awareness, they say, I'm a failure. With awareness, they say, what can this teach me? The event is the same. The sanctuary changes everything. Next line, bring it unto the Lord. The Lord represents the governing principle of truth. The verse is teaching. Don't offer your experiences to fear. Don't offer them to resentment. Don't offer them to ego. Offer them to truth. Relationship example. Someone experiences betrayal. They can offer it to bitterness or understanding. The offering determines the outcome. Unto the priest. The priest represents discernment. This is extremely important. Awareness alone is not enough. Discernment must interpret what awareness sees. Relatable example. Two people experience the same event. One becomes wiser. one becomes more bitter. Why? Because discernment interpreted the event differently. In career, someone loses a job. One person learns new skills and grows. Another remains angry for 10 years. The event is identical. The priest differs. Next, peace offerings. Notice what the sacrifice becomes. Not punishment, not condemnation, not distraction, but peace. What is peace? Peace is not merely the absence of conflict. Peace is integration, wholeness, harmony, and alignment. Relatable example. Someone finally acknowledges, I was carrying resentment. The acknowledgement creates peace. Not because the past changed, because consciousness became integrated. Relationship example. Someone finally admits, I contributed to the problem too. Suddenly, healing becomes possible. Peace enters. During conflicts, people often tell only one side of the story. They make themselves the victim, and the other person becomes the villain. But real peace often begins when awareness says, let me honestly examine my part. That is bringing the sacrifice to the priest. That is moving from the field to the sanctuary. This is extremely relevant today. Many people sacrifice enormous amounts of energy arguing online, defending identities, proving themselves right, blaming others. Yet, very little of that energy becomes peace because it never reaches the sanctuary. Social media example. Someone sees a post they disagree with. Immediately, they react, attack, argue, defend. The sacrifice remains in the field. No peace emerges. The pattern of the verse. Notice the progression. Field, where experience happens. Tabernacle, awareness enters. Priest, discernment interprets. Peace offering, integration occurs. This is the entire awakening journey. Something happens. You become aware of it. You examine it. You learn from it. You become more whole. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly brought people from reaction to awareness, from blame to reflection, from division to integration, from conflict to peace. That is exactly the pattern we see here. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 5 teaches, the purpose of awareness is to transform life's experiences into wisdom and peace. Every sacrifice represents energy. Every experience represents potential growth. When consciousness brings its struggles, emotions, desires, and reactions into the sanctuary of awareness, discernment can transform them into peace offerings. The goal is not suppression. The goal is integration. Not denial, but understanding. Because what is brought before truth can be transformed. And what is transformed becomes peace within the kingdom. Verse 6. And the priest shall sprinkle the blood upon the altar of the Lord at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and burn the fat for a sweet savor unto the Lord. This verse takes the process one step further. In the previous verse, the sacrifice was brought from the field to the tabernacle to the priest. Now we see what happens next. The life energy represented by the sacrifice is transformed. Nothing is wasted. Everything becomes material for awakening. Let's look at the symbols. Priest equals discernment. Conscious awareness interpreting experience. Blood equals life, vitality, attention, or living energy. Altar equals transformation, refinement, conscious surrender. Door of the tabernacle equals the threshold where unconscious experience enters awareness. Fat equals stored energy, excess, attachments, accumulated patterns. Sweet savor equals harmony, alignment, coherence with truth. The priest sprinkles the blood. Remember, blood symbolizes life, the life of the experience, the energy within it, the emotional charge within it. Relatable example. Suppose someone experiences anger. The anger contains energy. The question becomes, what happens to that energy? Many people simply discharge it. They yell, blame, attack, or react The blood is spilled in the field. The priest's role. The priest does something different. The energy is brought into awareness. The life force contained within the experience is not wasted. It is examined, used, and transformed. Relationship example. Someone feels jealousy. Instead of immediately reacting, they bring the feeling before awareness. Now the energy becomes insight. It becomes growth. It becomes understanding. The blood reaches the altar. Next line, upon the altar. The altar is where transformation occurs. Not suppression, not denial, but transformation. This is important. Many people think spiritual growth means pretending emotions don't exist. The altar teaches something very different. It says, bring the emotion, bring the experience, bring the energy, then allow transformation. Fear brought to the altar may become wisdom. Pain brought to the altar may become compassion. Failure brought to the altar may become understanding. At the door of the tabernacle, the door is the place of transition, where unconscious experience becomes conscious awareness. Have you ever had a moment where you suddenly caught yourself? You were about to react. Then awareness entered. That moment is the doorway. Relationship example. Someone is about to send an angry message, then pauses, reflects, and examines. Awareness has entered through the door. Next line, burn the fat. Now we come to one of the most beautiful symbols in the chapter. The fat often represents excess, stored energy, accumulated attachments. What is weighing consciousness down? Many people carry emotional fat, resentment, grudges, shame, guilt, and old stories. These things accumulate. They become heavy. Spiritual example. Someone collects beliefs for years. Some remain useful. Others become excess baggage. The fat accumulates. Why burn the fat? Because awakening requires refinement. Not everything needs to be carried forever. Relationship example. Someone still carries hurt from a relationship that ended 20 years ago. The memory remains, the lesson remains, but the attachment can be burned. In career, someone still defines themselves by a failure from 10 years ago. The event is over, yet the emotional weight remains. The fact remains. Many people think they are protecting themselves by carrying old wounds. In reality, they are carrying excess weight. The wound becomes identity. The story becomes identity. The fact remains on the altar, waiting to be burned. Next line, a sweet savor unto the Lord. The sweet savor is not about God enjoying smoke. Remember, God is a spirit. So it is not about God enjoying smoke. Symbolically, it represents harmony, alignment, coherence, the result of successful transformation. Think about the relief that comes when you finally let something go. Not because the event never happened, but because it no longer governs you. That is a sweet savor. Relationship example. Someone finally forgives. The burden lifts. The heart becomes lighter. Harmony enters. In career, someone stops defining themselves by past failures. Suddenly, new possibilities appear. The atmosphere changes. Notice the pattern. Blood, life energy. Altar, transformation. Fat, attachments. Sweet savor, peace and alignment. This is the entire awakening process. Life provides the experience. Awareness receives it. Discernment interprets it. Attachments are released. Then peace emerges. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Think about how often Jesus invited people to release burdens. Not because their experiences were unreal, but because carrying them forever prevents transformation. The altar exists for a reason. Every challenge in life contains energy, lessons, or opportunities for growth. The question is whether the energy becomes wisdom or merely becomes suffering. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 6 teaches, the purpose of awareness is not merely to observe life, but to transform it. The blood represents the energy contained within every experience. The altar represents conscious transformation. The fat represents attachments and accumulated burdens. The sweet savor represents the harmony that emerges when consciousness releases what no longer serves life. Awakening is not the avoidance of experience. It is the transformation of experience into wisdom. And when life energy is brought before the altar of awareness, even pain can become insight. Even failure can become growth. And even burdens can become peace. Next verse. And they shall no more offer their sacrifices unto devils, after whom they have gone a whoring. This shall be a statute forever unto them throughout their generations. When many people read the word devils, they immediately imagine supernatural beings. But if we stay consistent with the symbolic framework we've been using, the deeper question becomes, what is receiving your attention? What is receiving your life energy? What are you sacrificing to? Because every person serves something. Every person offers sacrifices. The question is not whether sacrifices exist. The question is where they are being directed. Sacrifices equals attention, energy, focus, devotion, life force. Devils equals false masters, illusions, destructive patterns, and conscious forces. Whoring equals divided loyalty, abandoning truth for competing attachments. Generations equals recurring patterns passed through consciousness. Just like Genesis 5. What are the devils? Symbolically, devils represent anything that pulls consciousness away from alignment. Anything that continually consumes life energy without producing life. Many people sacrifice enormous amounts of life energy to fear, anxiety, resentment, comparison, and approval seeking. These become their masters. Relationship example. Someone sacrifices their peace to constant suspicion. They are always suspicious every day, every week, every year. The sacrifice continues. The suspicion becomes the master. In career, someone sacrifices their health, family, and peace solely for status. Eventually, they reach the goal and discover emptiness. The sacrifice was made to a false god. This connects beautifully to modern life. Most people don't bow before statues, but many bow before validation, money, image, public opinion, and fear of rejection. The form changes, the principle remains. Social media example. Someone wakes up and immediately checks for likes, comments, views, and engagement. Their mood rises and falls according to public approval. The sacrifice is being offered somewhere. After whom they have gone a whoring. Throughout scripture, whoredom usually symbolizes divided loyalty. Someone says, I want peace, yet continually feeds conflict. Someone says, I want healing, yet continually feeds resentment. Someone says, I want truth, yet only accept ideas that confirm existing beliefs. The loyalties are divided. Relationship example. Someone says they want a healthy relationship, yet repeatedly chooses partners who reinforce unhealthy patterns. Their desire and their devotion are not aligned. Why are sacrifices being offered to devils? Because unconsciousness always seeks an object of devotion. If awareness is absent, something else takes the throne. If someone never examines their fears, the fears begin governing life. The fear becomes king. It becomes priest. It receives sacrifices. In career, someone becomes obsessed with proving themselves. Every decision revolves around external validation. Years of life energy are sacrificed. The master receives its offering. Many people think freedom means I serve nobody. Yet everyone serves something. The real question is, what is sitting on the throne? Is it truth, awareness, wisdom, or fear, ego, approval, or resentment? Something always receives the sacrifice. Next line, a statute forever throughout their generations. The principle is timeless. Not because of a ritual, because consciousness continues functioning this way. Every generation faces new idols. The forms change, the pattern remains. Yesterday may be golden calves. Today, social validation, status, identity, and image. Tomorrow, something else. The principle continues. Some people worship relationships. Others worship independence. Others worship being right. Anything can become an idol if it occupies the throne. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly spoke about serving two masters. Why? Because divided devotion fragments consciousness. Exactly the same principle appears here. Relatable example. Someone wants truth, but also wants comfort. When truth challenges comfort, a choice appears. Which master receives the sacrifice? Symbolically, Leviticus 17:7 teaches, be conscious of what receives your attention, devotion, and life energy. Every sacrifice strengthens something. Every offering feeds something. Every repeated focus creates a master. The question is, what is being fed? What is growing? What is sitting on the throne? Because consciousness eventually becomes shaped by whatever continually receives its sacrifices. An awakening begins when life energy is withdrawn from false masters and brought back into alignment with truth. Just like Malachi. Malachi 3. Bring ye all the tithes and offerings. Awakening begins when life energy is withdrawn from false masters and brought back into alignment with truth. Verse 8. And thou shalt say unto them, whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers which sojourn among you, that offered a burnt offering or sacrifice. This verse expands the principle we just explored. Notice something important. The instruction is no longer limited to Israel. It now includes the strangers which sojourn among you. Symbolically, this is profound because it reveals that the principle being described is universal. It is not merely about a particular nation. It is about consciousness itself. House of Israel equals awakened consciousness. Strangers equals unfamiliar thoughts, new influences, foreign ideas, aspects of self not yet integrated. Sojourn among you equals temporary influences moving through awareness. Burnt offering equals complete surrender, total devotion of energy. Sacrifice equals attention, focus, life force, emotional investment. Let's look at Israel and the stranger. Throughout scripture, strangers often symbolize what is unfamiliar, something not yet fully integrated into consciousness. Every day, new influences enter our awareness, new beliefs, new ideas, new opinions, new perspectives. These are strangers. They are visitors in the kingdom. Relationship example. Someone enters a new relationship. New emotions appear. New vulnerabilities appear. New experiences enter consciousness. The stranger has arrived. In career, someone starts a new job. new expectations, new challenges, new identities begin appearing. The stranger is among them. Why include the stranger? Because the principle applies universally. Whether something is familiar or unfamiliar, whether it comes from within or outside, the question remains, what are you offering your energy to? Fear doesn't care whether you are religious or spiritual or secular. The principle still works. What you continually feed grows. Burnt offerings. This symbol is especially powerful. Unlike some offerings where only a portion is given, the burnt offering represents total devotion, complete surrender, complete investment. Relatable example. Think about something that consumes your attention completely. Something you think about constantly. Something that occupies enormous mental space. That is functioning as a burnt offering. Relationship example. Someone becomes obsessed with a relationship. Every thought revolves around it. Every emotion revolves around it. The offering is total. In career, someone sacrifices sleep, health, peace, and family for success. The offering becomes complete. Social media example. Some people offer entire evenings, entire weekends, entire years to endless scrolling. The life energy is being consumed. The burnt offering is taking place. The universal principle. Notice how the text includes Israel and the stranger. This reveals that the principle applies to every aspect of consciousness. Whether the influence comes from childhood, culture, family, religion, social media, or personal experience, the same question applies. Does this deserve my devotion? This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly asked people to examine where their treasure was. Why? Because treasure and sacrifice are closely connected. Where attention goes, life follows. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 8 teaches, be conscious of what receives your total devotion and life energy. Whether the influence comes from familiar patterns or unfamiliar sources, the principle remains the same. Every sacrifice feeds something. Every devotion strengthens something. Every repeated focus shapes consciousness. Awakened awareness therefore learns to examine carefully what receives its offerings. Because whatever continually receives your life eventually helps determine the life you experience. Verse 9. And bringeth it not unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, to offer it unto the Lord. Even that man shall be cut off from among his people. This verse brings us back to the central theme of the chapter. Over and over again, Leviticus 17 keeps repeating the same principle. Do not live unconsciously. Do not spend your life energy unconsciously. Bring your experiences into awareness. The issue is not the sacrifice itself. The issue is whether the sacrifice is brought to the sanctuary. Door of the tabernacle equals the threshold of awareness. Offer it unto the Lord equals bring it into alignment with truth. Cut off equals separation, fragmentation, disconnection from conscious living. People equals the integrated aspects of awakened consciousness. Let's look at the door. Notice that the offering must be brought to the door, not even fully into the sanctuary yet, just to the threshold. Why the door? Because transformation begins the moment awareness enters. Before healing, before understanding, before change, awareness comes first. Relatable example. Someone finally says, I am angry. That is the door. Not everyone else is the problem. Not nothing is wrong. Simply, I am angry. Awareness has arrived. Relationship example. Someone finally admits, I am afraid of being abandoned. The door has opened. Healing can now begin. This is extremely relatable. Most people spend years avoiding the door. They avoid self-examination, accountability, reflection, and awareness. As long as the door is avoided, transformation remains difficult. In career, someone keeps changing jobs. The same conflict follows them everywhere. One day they ask, could I be contributing to this pattern? That question is the door. Next line, offer it unto the Lord. The Lord represents truth, reality, the governing principle of alignment. Offering something unto truth means allowing reality to reveal what is actually happening, not what ego wants, not what fear wants, but truth. Relationship example. Someone asks, what is my role in this situation? Rather than, how do I prove I'm right? The offering has reached the sanctuary. Next line, that man shall be cut off. This phrase appears frequently in the law and often sounds terrifying when read literally. But symbolically, it describes a consequence. Suppose someone refuses self-examination for, let's say, 20 years, refuses accountability, refuses awareness. Eventually, they become disconnected from growth, disconnected from learning, disconnected from transformation. They are cut off. Relationship example. Someone continually blames every failed relationship on their partners. Years pass, the same pattern repeats. Growth cannot occur because awareness never enters. The person becomes cut off from the possibility of transformation. In career, someone insists everyone else is the problem. Eventually, opportunities disappear. Not because life is punishing them, because awareness never entered the process. Cut off from among his people. Remember, the people symbolize the integrated kingdom within. Being cut off represents fragmentation, division, disconnection. Spiritual example. Someone senses a truth internally, yet continually suppresses it. Eventually, tension develops between what they know and how they live. The separation increases. The chapter keeps teaching one central principle: bring life into awareness. Bring emotions into awareness. Bring desires into awareness. Bring fears into awareness. Bring ambitions into awareness. Why? Because whatever remains unconscious eventually governs from the shadows. An unexamined fear often controls more of a person's life than a recognized fear. Recognition begins freedom. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Think about how often Jesus asks questions. Who do men say that I am? Questions create awareness. Questions bring people to the door. Questions expose what is hidden. The door of the tabernacle opens through awareness. Relationship example. Instead of asking, why are they doing this to me? Awareness asks, what is this situation revealing about me? That shift changes everything. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 9 teaches, What is not brought into awareness cannot be transformed. The door of the tabernacle represents the threshold where unconscious living becomes conscious living. The offering represents life energy. The Lord represents truth. The sanctuary represents awareness. When experiences are brought before truth, transformation becomes possible. When experiences remain hidden from awareness, fragmentation continues. The chapter is not threatening exclusion. It is describing the natural consequence of unconscious living. Because whatever is denied remains active. Whatever is hidden remains influential. But whatever is brought into the light can begin to heal. Verse 10. And whatsoever man there be of the house of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, that eateth any manner of blood, I will even set my face against that soul that eateth blood, and will cut him off from among his people. Blood equals life, vitality, living energy, consciousness in motion. Eat equals consume, internalize, absorb, make part of yourself. Face of God equals reality confronting consciousness, truth exposing distortion. Soul equals the conscious self, the living identity. Cut off equals separation from alignment, fragmentation, or disconnection. What does it mean to eat blood? This is where the symbolism becomes fascinating. If blood represents life, then eating blood symbolically points toward trying to consume life without honoring its source. Taking life force for personal possession rather than receiving it as sacred. Some people constantly consume other people's energy, other people's attention, other people's validation, without ever producing life themselves. They are feeding on life rather than participating in life. Relationship example. Someone expects their partner to provide all their happiness, all their worth, all their identity. Instead of cultivating those things internally, they begin feeding on another person's life force. This is extremely relevant. Many people try to live through other people instead of discovering their own life, their own awareness, their own connection to truth. Social media example. Someone's entire sense of worth depends on likes, comments, views, and approval. They are consuming life from external sources. The blood is being eaten. Why is this a problem? because life was never meant to be possessed. It was meant to flow. Think about someone who constantly needs validation. No amount is enough because they are trying to consume something that cannot permanently satisfy them. Career example. Someone reaches a promotion, then immediately needs another, then another, then another. The external achievement cannot provide the life they seek. Next line, I will set my face against that soul. This sounds harsh until we understand the symbolism. The face represents reality, truth, awareness. Symbolically, the verse is saying, reality itself will eventually expose the limitation of trying to consume life rather than live it. Relatable example. Someone spends years seeking worth through external approval. Eventually, reality reveals approval cannot create self-worth. The face has appeared. Truth confronts the illusion. Relationship example. Someone expects their partner to heal all their wounds. Eventually, reality reveals healing cannot be outsourced. Truth appears. Next line, that soul that eateth blood. Notice the focus is on the soul, the conscious self, the identity. The issue is not physical consumption. The issue is the relationship consciousness has with life itself. Some people consume experiences. Others learn from experiences. Some consume relationships. Others grow through relationships. The orientation is different. The chapter has repeatedly taught, bring life energy to the sanctuary. Bring experiences to awareness. Bring sacrifices to truth. Now it adds, do not try to possess life. Honor life. Participate in life. Allow life to flow. Next line, cut off from among his people. Again, this describes consequence. Relatable example. Someone becomes obsessed with extracting value from everyone around them. Eventually, relationships weaken. Trust weakens. Connection weakens. The person becomes isolated. They are cut off. Spiritual example. Someone seeks only spiritual experiences, never transformation, never growth, never integration. Eventually, they become disconnected from the deeper purpose of the journey. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly taught about life, not possession of life, participation in life, flowing life, abundant life, living water. All of these images point toward movement and flow, not ownership. Their deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 10 teaches, life is sacred and cannot be reduced to something merely consumed for personal gain. Blood represents life force. Eating blood represents trying to possess, control, or consume life without honoring its source. The face of God represents reality exposing this illusion. The result is fragmentation because consciousness becomes disconnected from the flow of life itself. Awakened awareness learns a different way. Instead of consuming life, it participates in life. Instead of possessing life, it honors life. Instead of extracting from life, it aligns with life. Because life flourishes most fully when it is received as sacred rather than treated as something to be owned. Verse 11. For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you upon the altar to make an atonement for your souls, for it is the blood that maketh an atonement for the soul. This is arguably the most famous verse in Leviticus. It is quoted constantly in discussions about sacrifice, atonement, salvation, blood, and forgiveness. Yet, it is also one of the most misunderstood verses because many people stop reading at the symbol and never ask, what is blood actually representing? The verse itself gives us the key. It says, the life of the flesh is in the blood. The emphasis is not merely blood. The emphasis is life. Blood equals life, vitality, consciousness in motion, or living energy. Flesh equals manifested life, human experience, outward expression. Altar equals transformation, refinement, or conscious surrender. Atonement equals restoration, reconciliation, bringing into alignment. Soul equals conscious identity, the experiencing self. The life is in the blood. Notice what the text actually says. It says the life is in the blood. Life is the focus. Life is the sacred thing. Life is the treasure. Throughout scripture, blood becomes a symbol for living awareness, living truth, living consciousness, not dead information, living reality. I have given it to you upon the altar. Life is given upon the altar. Why? Because transformation requires life. You cannot transform what you refuse to bring into awareness. The energy must be present. The experience must be present. The life must be present. A relationship cannot heal if the real feelings remain hidden. The life must come to the altar. The truth must come to the altar. The living reality must come to the altar. Career example. Someone cannot grow professionally while pretending weaknesses don't exist. The real experience must reach awareness. The life must reach the altar. What is atonement? This is one of the most misunderstood words in religious history. Many people hear atonement and immediately think punishment, payment, appeasement. But symbolically, atonement is much closer to restoration, reconciliation, alignment, and integration. Relatable example. Suppose two friends stop speaking. Years later, they reconcile. The relationship becomes whole again. A form of atonement has occurred. Relationship example. A person has been at war with themselves for years, filled with shame, filled with self-hatred. Then awareness enters, compassion enters, healing begins. The divided self begins becoming one again. That is atonement. The altar creates atonement. Notice what creates the restoration: the altar, the place of conscious transformation. Relatable example. Someone spends years blaming everyone else. Then one day, awareness arrives. They say, I contributed to this too. That realization is painful, but it creates integration. It creates atonement. Next line. For it is the blood that maketh atonement. Again, blood represents life. Life creates restoration. Notice what the verse does not say. It does not say death creates atonement. It says life creates atonement. The life in the blood, the living energy, the conscious awareness, the willingness to bring experience before the altar. A dead relationship cannot reconcile itself. Living communication can. Living honesty can. Living vulnerability can. Life restores. Spiritual example. Someone has spent years asleep to their patterns. Then awareness awakens. The living awareness begins restoring what unconsciousness fragmented. The blood makes atonement. Relatable example. Many people spend years searching for peace externally, yet the real reconciliation often begins when inner conflict is finally brought into awareness. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Think about how often Jesus restored people, not through condemnation, through awakening, through awareness, through bringing life where unconsciousness had created fragmentation. The hidden pattern, notice the flow. Blood, which is life. Altar, transformation. Atonement, restoration. The soul, wholeness. This is the entire journey of awakening. Life is brought into awareness. Awareness transforms it. Transformation restores alignment. Alignment brings wholeness. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 11 teaches, life itself is the instrument of restoration. The blood represents living awareness. The altar represents conscious transformation. The soul represents the experiencing self. Atonement is the restoration of alignment where fragmentation once existed. The verse is not about appeasing an angry God. It is about what happens when life, truth, awareness, and consciousness are brought together in the sanctuary of transformation. Because healing occurs when what is alive within us is honestly brought before the altar of awareness. And when that happens, what was divided can become whole again. Verse 12. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, no soul of you shall eat blood, neither shall any stranger that sojourneth among you eat blood. Notice the very first word, therefore. This means the verse is directly connected to what we just read. Verse 11 explained, the life of the flesh is in the blood. Now verse 12 draws a conclusion from that truth. If blood symbolizes life itself, then the instruction becomes much deeper than a dietary regulation. The principle becomes, do not consume life in a way that disconnects it from its sacred purpose. Blood equals life, vitality, awareness, living energy. It equals absorb, consume, internalize, take possession of. Children of Israel equals awakened consciousness. Stranger equals unfamiliar influences. New patterns entering awareness. Soul equals conscious identity, the experiencing self. Why repeat the instruction? Whenever scripture repeats something, it usually means we should pay attention. The chapter keeps returning to blood because it keeps returning to life. The issue is not really blood. The issue is how consciousness relates to life itself. Many people try to possess life rather than participate in it. They want to control outcomes, people, relationships, and circumstances. Instead of flowing with reality, they attempt to consume it. Relationship example. Someone treats a partner as a possession. The relationship begins suffocating. Why? Because life thrives through connection, not ownership. No soul shall eat blood. Notice the focus is on the soul, the conscious self, the identity, the experiencing awareness. Symbolically, the soul is being warned against trying to absorb life merely for self-gratification. Life was never meant to be reduced to consumption. Think about someone who constantly asks, "What can I get?" rather than "What can I contribute?" Eventually, life becomes transactional. Everything becomes consumption. In career, someone enters every opportunity asking, "How can this benefit me?" without considering, "How can I create value?" The orientation is extraction rather than participation. The stranger too. This is fascinating. The instruction applies not only to Israel, but also to the stranger. Why? Because this principle is universal. It doesn't matter where an influence comes from. The principle remains the same. Whether the idea comes from family, religion, culture, social media, or personal experience, the question remains, is this teaching me to honor life or merely consume life? Social media example. Many platforms are designed around consumption. Consume more content, more outrage, more comparison, more stimulation, very little reflection, very little transformation. The soul is continually consuming. This connects beautifully to modern relationships. Some people enter relationships seeking validation, rescue, identity, and completion. They are consuming life from another person. Healthier consciousness asks, how can we grow together? How can we create life together? How can we contribute to one another? That is participation rather than consumption. If the kingdom is within, then life is within. The source is within. The sanctuary is within. Therefore, life cannot ultimately be stolen from somewhere else. It must be discovered, expressed, and lived. Many people spend decades searching externally for something that was always waiting to be awakened internally. Peace, worth, purpose, love, and meaning. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Think about how often Jesus invited people into abundant life. Not borrowed life, not second-hand life, but living life, flowing life, awakened life. Relationship example. Someone finally stops seeking worth through another person's approval. They begin discovering worth within. Life starts flowing differently. The hidden pattern. Notice what the chapter keeps teaching. Blood, which is life. Eating blood, which is trying to possess life. Altar, which is transforming life. Atonement, restoring life. Peace offerings, integrating life. The entire chapter revolves around one question. What are you doing with the life entrusted to you? The verse teaches, do not reduce life to something merely consumed. Honor it. Participate in it. Allow it to flow. Recognize its sacredness. The happiest people are often not those who consume the most. They are those who participate most fully, those who engage, who contribute, who create, who live. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 12 teaches, life is sacred and should not be treated merely as something to extract, possess, or consume. The blood represents the living energy flowing through existence. The soul is invited to honor that life rather than attempt to own it. Whether familiar influences or unfamiliar influences enter consciousness, the principle remains unchanged. Awakened awareness learns to participate in life rather than consume life. Because life flourishes when it flows through consciousness, not when consciousness attempts to imprison it for personal gain. Verse 13. And whatsoever man there be of the children of Israel, or of the strangers that sojourn among you, which hunteth and catcheth any beast or fowl that may be eaten, he shall even pour out the blood thereof and cover it with dust. This verse continues the discussion about blood, life, and awareness. But now, an entirely new symbol appears. Dust. And once we understand the symbolism of blood and dust together, the verse becomes incredibly profound. Let's look at the symbols. Hunted equals pursuit, seeking, striving, acquiring. Beast equals instinctive drives, powerful energies within consciousness. Foul equals thoughts, ideas, elevated perspectives, mental activity. Blood equals life, vitality, living energy. Pour out equals release, surrender, return. Dust equals the earthly realm, human limitations, manifested experience, the temporary. Now let's look at the hunter. Notice the verse begins with a hunter, which is a seeker, someone pursuing something. Every person is hunting something. Some hunt success, love, security, approval, meaning, or truth. The object changes, the pursuit remains. In career, someone spends years pursuing advancement, learning, building, growing. They are hunting. In relationship, someone seeks companionship, connection, partnership. They too are hunting. The beast and the fowl. The verse includes both beasts and birds. Symbolically, this is fascinating. The beast often represents instinct, desire, survival drives, and emotional forces. Birds or fowl often represent thoughts, ideas, inspiration, and higher perspectives. Together, the verse encompasses what happens in our emotions and what happens in our minds, the whole spectrum of human experience. Next line, pour out the blood. Now we arrive at the heart of the teaching. Remember, blood represents life, life energy, vitality. Why pour it out? Because life does not belong to the ego. Life is not something to possess. Life flows. Many people try to own experiences. They cling to victories, failures, identities, and labels. Yet life keeps moving. The blood must be poured out. Relationship example. A relationship ends. The lesson remains. The growth remains. But eventually, the attachment must be released. The blood is poured out. In career, someone loses a position. The experience contains wisdom. The experience contains growth. But eventually, the attachment to the old identity must be released. Learn the lesson, but don't become the lesson. The lesson remains. The attachment can be released. That is pouring out the blood. Next says, cover it with dust. This is one of the most fascinating symbols in the entire chapter. Throughout scripture, dust symbolizes the earthly realm, human experience, mortality, temporary forms. Remember, dust thou art, and unto dust shalt thou return. Symbolically, To cover the blood with dust means return the experience to the realm of learning. Do not worship it. Do not cling to it. Do not build your identity around it. Relatable example. Someone experiences a painful breakup. Years later, they still introduce themselves through the wound. The blood was never covered. The life remains trapped in the story. Another example. Someone experiences success. 20 years later, they still live off that one achievement. The blood was never covered. The experience became identity. This is extremely relevant. Many people become trapped by old victories, old failures, old wounds, old identities. The chapter teaches, honor the experience, learn from the experience, then release the experience. Relationship example. Someone forgives, not because the event didn't happen, but because life must continue flowing. The blood is poured out, the dust covers it. Why dust? Because dust reminds us everything in form is temporary. Everything in the outer world changes. Everything passes. Think about something that felt absolutely overwhelming 10 years ago. Today, it may barely occupy your thoughts. Time covered it with dust. The chapter invites us to participate consciously in that process. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly taught, let the dead bury the dead. Do not lay up treasures that decay. Do not cling to temporary forms. The same principle appears here. Life flows, attachment imprison. The hidden pattern. Notice the sequence. Hand, which is pursuit. Catch, which is experience. Blood, which is life energy. Pour out, which is release. Dust, return to the realm of learning and impermanence. This is a complete cycle of consciousness. The verse teaches, pursue life, experience life, learn from life, but do not imprison life. Allow it to flow. Allow it to teach. Allow it to move on. The healthiest people often know how to say, that chapter taught me a lot. But it is no longer who I am. The blood has been poured out. The dust has covered it. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 13 teaches, every experience contains life, but life must be allowed to flow rather than become trapped in attachment. The hands represent pursuit. The beast and fowl represent the experiences of emotion and thought. The blood represents the life contained within those experiences. Pouring out the blood represents releasing attachment. Covering it with dust represents recognizing the temporary nature of all outer forms. Awakened consciousness learns to honor experiences without becoming imprisoned by them. Because life is meant to move through us, teach us, transform us, and continue flowing, not becoming a permanent monument to yesterday. Verse 14. For it is the life of all flesh. The blood of it is for the life thereof. Therefore I said unto the children of Israel, ye shall eat the blood of no manner of flesh, for the life of all flesh is the blood thereof. Whosoever eateth it shall be cut off. This verse is essentially the climax of the chapter. 3 times in just a few verses, the text repeats the same idea. The life is in the blood. Whenever scripture repeats something repeatedly, it's usually emphasizing the core lesson. The chapter wants us to understand one thing above all else. Life is sacred. Not merely human life, not merely animal life, life itself. Flesh equals manifested life, physical experience, outward expression. Blood equals life, vitality, consciousness in motion. Life equals the animating principle flowing through existence. Eat equals absorb, possess, consume, make part of identity. Cut off equals separation from alignment or fragmentation. The life of all flesh. Notice the verse doesn't say the life of some flesh. It says the life of all flesh. This is profound. The same life animates everything. Different forms, one life. Different expressions, one source. Paul says we are God's offspring. Jesus says the kingdom is within. Paul says Christ is within. God dwells in us. The emphasis is always on a shared source, a shared life. We are one. Think about electricity. One current, many devices, different expressions, same energy. The chapter is pointing toward a similar principle. The blood is for the life thereof. The blood is not the life itself. The blood carries the life. It expresses the life. It manifests the life. Therefore ye shall eat no blood. Again, if blood represents life, then the instruction becomes, do not try to possess what belongs to the flow of life itself. Many people try to possess things that can only be experienced, such as peace, love, joy, or meaning. The harder they try to own them, the more they slip away. Relationship example. Someone tries to possess another person completely. control them, define them, own them. The relationships surface because life flourishes through freedom, not possession. Why does the chapter keep repeating this? Because humans repeatedly forget it. We try to own relationships, identities, achievements, and beliefs. Then life changes and we suffer because we were attached to what was always flowing. Career example. Someone builds their entire identity around a job title. The title disappears. A crisis follows. Why? Because the life was mistaken for the form. Whosoever eateth it shall be cut off. Again, this is consequence. If someone continually tries to extract life from external things like approval, status, possessions, or validation, eventually they become disconnected from the deeper source of life. The result is fragmentation. Relationship example. Someone expects another person to become their source of happiness. Eventually, disappointment appears. Not because love is bad, because no external form can permanently provide what consciousness is seeking from its source. This connects beautifully to the entire chapter. The chapter has barely taught bring sacrifices to awareness, honor life, release attachment, allow life to flow, do not worship forms. Now it brings everything together. Life belongs to life. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Think about how often Jesus spoke about life, abundant life, living water, eternal life. The emphasis is always on participation in life, not possession of life. Spiritual example. The most awakened people often stop asking, how can I control life? And begin asking, how can I align with life? That shift changes everything. The hidden pattern. Notice what the chapter has progressively revealed. Blood, which is life. Sacrifice, where life energy goes. Altar, transformation. Atonement, restoration. Pouring out the blood, release. Not eating blood. Do not attempt to possess life. This entire chapter is teaching a sacred relationship with life itself. The verse teaches honor life, respect life, participate in life. Do not attempt to imprison life inside identities, attachments, possessions, or external forms. Life is always greater than the form through which it flows. Relatable example. Someone loses a chapter of their life, like a job, a relationship, a role, or a title, yet life continues because life was never the form. The form carried the life for a season. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, Leviticus 17 verse 14 teaches, the life flowing through existence is sacred and cannot be possessed. Blood symbolizes the movement and expression of life. The repeated instruction not to eat blood reminds consciousness not to confuse life itself with the forms through which life temporarily appears. Awakened awareness learns to honor life without trying to own it, to participate in life without controlling it, to receive life without imprisoning it. Because the moment we mistake the form for the life, attachment begins. And attachment eventually produces suffering. But when consciousness recognizes the sacred flow of life beneath all forms, it becomes possible to live with gratitude, freedom, and deeper alignment. Verse 15. And every soul that eateth that which died of itself, or that which was torn with beasts, whether it be one of your own country or a stranger, he shall both wash his clothes and bathe himself in water and be unclean until the evening, then shall he be clean. This verse brings together many of the themes we've already encountered: life, awareness, cleansing, renewal, and transformation. And once again, the language is deeply symbolic. The question becomes, what happens when consciousness feeds on what no longer contains life? Let's look at the symbols. Soul equals conscious identity, the experiencing self. It equals internalize, absorb, make part of oneself. Died of itself equals something that has lost its life naturally. Expired beliefs, outdated identities, dead patterns. Torn with beasts equals something damaged by lower drives, fears, instincts, and unconscious forces. Clothes equals outward identity, how consciousness expresses itself. Water equals awareness, truth, cleansing, understanding. Evening equals transition, reflection, completion of a cycle. Clean equals restored alignment. Now let's take it line by line. That which died of itself. Something that dies of itself is something that already lost its life, its vitality, its usefulness, its purpose. Sometimes people continue feeding on old stories long after those stories have lost their life. For example, I was rejected 20 years ago. I failed once. Someone hurt me years ago. The event is over, yet consciousness continues consuming it. Relationship example. A relationship ends, but years later, the person still derives identity from the ending. They continue feeding on what has already died. In career, someone lost a job years ago, yet they continue defining themselves through that experience. The chapter is asking, why are you feeding on something that no longer contains life? Next line, torn with beasts. This symbol becomes even deeper. Remember, the beast often represents instinct, fear, survival consciousness, and conscious drives. Symbolically, something torn by beasts is something that has been distorted by lower awareness. Relatable example. Imagine receiving advice from someone consumed by bitterness. The advice may contain truth, but it has been torn by the beast. The distortion enters the message. Social media example. Many narratives online are driven by outrage, fear, tribalism, and division. The information may contain facts, but the beast has torn it. Why is this important? Because consciousness becomes what it continually consumes. Someone spends years consuming fear-based media, outrage-based content, victim narratives. Eventually, their perception begins reflecting the diet. Relationship example. Someone constantly listens to people who tell them nobody can be trusted. Soon, they struggle to trust anyone. The torn meat becomes part of consciousness. Next line, wash his clothes. Notice the response. The text does not say, destroy the person. It says, wash. Throughout scripture, clothes often represent identity, self-expression, outward manifestation. Relatable example. Someone realizes, I've been carrying a false identity. Awareness enters. The cleansing begins. The garments are washed. Just like Malachi 3, the fullest soap. Spiritual example. Many people inherit beliefs that no longer serve growth. The beliefs are not their true identity. The garments need washing. Next line, bathe himself in water. Water consistently symbolizes truth, awareness, understanding, and cleansing perception. This connects beautifully to Jesus. Think about how often Jesus uses water imagery. Living water, rivers of living water, washing, cleansing. Water repeatedly represents awakened awareness. Relatable example. Someone suddenly sees a pattern clearly. A realization enters. Awareness washes perception. The water is working. Relationship example. Someone realizes, I have been projecting old wounds onto new people. That insight begins cleansing consciousness. Next line, unclean until evening. This is extremely important. Notice the uncleanness is temporary. Why evening? Evening represents transition, the completion of a cycle, the period between one state and another. Sometimes awareness arrives immediately. Integration takes time. Relationship example. Someone gains a profound insight about themselves. The realization happens instantly. The transformation unfolds gradually. The evening passes. The cleansing continues. Then shall he be clean. This is the beautiful conclusion. The goal is restoration, not condemnation. This mirrors everything we've seen in Leviticus. Over and over again, awareness enters. Cleansing occurs. Alignment is restored. The process is always moving toward wholeness. Someone discovers they've been living from fear. Their discovery doesn't make them condemned. Their discovery becomes the beginning of healing. This connects beautifully to modern life. Many people are feeding on things that died long ago. Old identities, old hurts, old labels, old fears. Others are feeding on things torn by beasts, outrage, division, fear, and manipulation. The chapter invites awareness to ask, is this still alive? Is this nourishing life? Or am I consuming something that's already lost its vitality? The hidden pattern. Notice the sequence. Dead thing, which is expired pattern. Torn thing, which is distorted pattern. Washing, awareness enters. Water, truth cleanses. Evening, integration occurs. Clean, alignment returns. This is the cycle of transformation. The verse teaches, be mindful of what you allow into consciousness. Not everything is nourishing. Not everything contains life. Not everything deserves residence within the sanctuary. And if you discover that you'll be feeding on something unhealthy, the answer is not condemnation. The answer is awareness. The answer is cleansing. The answer is truth. One of the most powerful moments in awakening is realizing, I don't have to keep feeding on this story anymore. That realization begins the washing. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, verse 15 teaches, consciousness must learn to distinguish between what carries life and what merely carries memory, distortion, or fear. What died of itself represents expired identities and outdated patterns. What was torn by beasts represents experiences and narratives distorted by lower awareness. The washing represents conscious examination. The water represents truth. The evening represents the integration process, and cleanliness represents restored alignment. The chapter reminds us that awakening is not about never encountering distortion. It is about recognizing it, cleansing it through awareness, and allowing consciousness to return to life-giving truth. Verse 16, but if he wash them not, nor bathe his flesh, then he shall bear his iniquity. This final verse beautifully summarizes the entire chapter. Everything we have read about blood, life, sacrifice, awareness, cleansing, water, and the sanctuary comes down to one simple principle. What happens when awareness refuses transformation? Wash equals examine, cleanse, bring into awareness. Bathe equals immerse in truth, allow deeper transformation. Flesh equals manifested identity, lived experience. Bear equals carry, continue experiencing. Iniquity equals misalignment, distortion, living from separation rather than truth. If he wash them not, notice what the verse does not say. It does not say God will punish him. It says he will bear it. That is a very different statement. Suppose someone refuses to address resentment, bitterness, fear, or insecurity. The resentment continues. The bitterness continues. The fear continues. They carry it. Relationship example. Someone is wounded. The wound is real, but they refuse healing, refuse reflection, refuse awareness. Years later, the same wound still governs their relationships. They bear it. Nor bathe his flesh. Washing speaks of awareness. Bathing speaks of immersion, going deeper, allowing the transformation to reach identity itself. Many people acknowledge a problem. Far fewer allow the problem to transform them. Career example. Someone knows I procrastinate. That is washing. But then they continue exactly the same way for 10 years. The bathing never occurs. The identity never changes. Spiritual example. Someone recognizes I am operating from fear, yet never examines the fear, never works through the fear, never allows awareness to transform the fear. The cleansing remains incomplete. Then he shall bear his iniquity. This phrase is often misunderstood. Iniquity is not merely wrongdoing. Symbolically, it is living out of alignment. Imagine driving a car with poor alignment. The vehicle still moves, but everything becomes harder. The tires wear unevenly. The steering drifts. The journey becomes exhausting. Spiritually, the same thing happens within consciousness. When awareness refuses correction, misalignment continues. The person bears it. Relationship example. Someone continually chooses unhealthy partners. The pattern repeats, not because life is punishing them, because the underlying misalignment remains unaddressed. This is extremely relatable. Many people want different results without different awareness. They want peace without reflection, healing without honesty, transformation without surrender. Yet the chapter keeps saying, bring it to the sanctuary, bring it to awareness, wash it, cleanse it. Career example. Someone blames every employer, every manager, every co-worker, yet never examines their own patterns. Eventually, they bear the consequence of the unexamined pattern. This connects beautifully to the entire chapter. Notice the progression. Sacrifice, life energy is spent. Blood, life itself, is recognized as sacred. Altar, transformation becomes possible. Atonement, restoration occurs. Water, awareness cleanses. Washing, truth is applied. Bearing iniquity, the cleansing is refused. The misalignment remains. The chapter has been describing the mechanics of awakening from beginning to end. This mirrors Jesus beautifully. Jesus repeatedly invited people into awareness, not because he wanted followers trapped in guilt, but because awareness creates freedom. Relatable example. Someone hears a truth that could change their life. They dismiss it, ignore it, resist it. Years later, the same problem remains. The truth was available. The cleansing was available. The person chose not to wash. The most important insight. Notice where responsibility ultimately lands. Not on another person, not on a priest, not on a ritual, not on a ceremony, on consciousness itself. Nobody can awaken for you. People can guide, teach, encourage, point, but eventually awareness must do its own work. The washing must become personal. Someone can receive all the advice in the world, but if they refuse self-examination, the pattern continues. Someone can attend every service, read every book, watch every teaching, yet if awareness never enters, transformation remains limited. the hidden pattern of the entire chapter. It began with blood, which is life, and it ends with washing, which is awareness. This is profound. The chapter begins with life and ends with what determines whether life becomes wisdom, which is awareness. The verse teaches truth can be offered, awareness can be available, transformation can be possible, but consciousness must participate. Healing begins the moment someone says, I am willing to see clearly. Without that willingness, the cycle continues. The deeper meaning. Symbolically, verse 16 teaches, awareness must cooperate with transformation. Life continually presents opportunities for growth. Truth continually offers cleansing. The water is available. The sanctuary is available. The altar is available. But if consciousness refuses awareness, the distortions remain active. The iniquity is born, not as punishment, but as consequence. Because what is not examined continues operating. What is not healed continues influencing. What is not washed continues shaping perception. Leviticus 17 ultimately becomes a profound teaching about the sacredness of life, the necessity of awareness, and the transformative power of bringing every experience into the sanctuary of truth. Leviticus 17 is not primarily a chapter about dietary laws or animal sacrifices. It is a chapter about life itself. It reveals blood as the symbol of life, sacrifice as the direction of life energy, the altar as transformation, atonement as restoration, water as awareness, cleansing as self-examination, and iniquity as misalignment. The chapter repeatedly asks, what are you doing with the life entrusted to you? Are you spending it unconsciously or bringing it before the sanctuary? Are you feeding on dead stories or living truth? Are you clinging to life or participating in life? The ultimate lesson of Leviticus 17 is that life becomes transformative when it is brought into awareness. Because what reaches the altar can be transformed. What reaches the water can be cleansed. What reaches awareness can be healed. And what is healed can return to alignment with the source. The chapter is complete. Thanks for being here, and I will see you in the next teaching. Have a good night.